The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not representative of the opinions and doctrine of Morris Community Church. We reserve the right to change our minds, and we reserve the right to be wrong. Welcome to the Roasted Christian Podcast. I'm Bobby.
And I'm John. Here at the Roasted Christian, we like our ideas the way we like our coffee, roasted.
Welcome, Roasted Christian listeners. Thanks for joining us for another episode, episode 7, season 2. Today, we're going to be digging deep with our good friend Dan Tiernan. Dan, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah.
Digging deep with Dan.
Digging deep with Dan.
We decided
alliterations.
we didn't get enough last time, so we're doing sort of part 2, but slightly different topic.
Yeah,
I think
it's all gonna blend in when we jump into the mind of Dan Tiernan. Man, it all is gonna blend in. There's no segmenting at all.
No compartmentalization.
Right.
Oneness, bro.
All right. Well, let's chit chat a tiny bit. John, you have a link I have not clicked on, and I think on purpose.
Okay.
I was strategic in not clicking on.
So I saw this deal. It was a blurb on the news. Oxford English Dictionary every year picks a word of the year. It's usually kind of a newer word, but it's also one that has seen a steep rise in popularity in that year.
Okay.
So 2016 word of the year, post-truth.
Post-truth.
Yeah, which is nuts to me. Apparently, the term has been in existence for about a decade.
Okay.
But this year saw a spike, and basically, it has denotatively, it just means basically appeal to emotion or reaction over logical or empirical truth.
Wow.
So it's not necessarily wrong, it's just kind of a shift in value.
Okay.
Connotatively, the word has been used for politics, and we've seen that, I guess, like in the whole political season this year. There's been a much greater reaction or greater clinging to an emotional reaction than what seems like kind of a logical exchange of facts.
Yeah, no kidding.
And you could well, yeah. I mean, you could maybe make the argument about that like any year, but I guess this was the first one that was like, this is just so wrong.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many like untruths being talked about, and nobody seems to care. It's like post-truth politics.
So this is talking about the receiving end, not the argumentation side?
Yeah, on the receiving end. So it kind of like the popular vote or the popular opinion seems to side in a post-truth society, quote unquote.
Okay, so it's not
with the emotional.
It's not the result of politicians or influencers choosing, I'm going to make a more emotional argument than a rational.
Well, that's
argument.
to be seen. That might be an element of it, right?
I don't know what came first.
Okay.
In that regard. I just saw that they chose that for the word of the year, and I'm like, dude,
wow,
what a time to be alive.
It's interesting that post-truth is the result of seeing more emotion expressed, as in assuming that emotion is not true, or that, like, can you break that down for me a little bit more?
Here's the definition, hopefully more clearly, as Oxford Dictionary defines it.
Okay.
It's an adjective defined as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief.
Okay, that makes sense.
So,
I would say it's both ends of like the argument side and the receiving side, because the argument side can leverage the emotion. And instead of even arguing with logic, they're like, listen, this doesn't feel right, or aren't you afraid, or, like, we all need to be happy and this is going to make us happy, or whatever.
Do you think this is a result of everyone now having a voice? Because 30 years ago we had objective truth, quotation marks, as in, the established media or the established voices, and then we could measure another person's opinion against that. But new technology is, it's breaking everything up.
Right. The one thing they mention is because we've seen such a wide variety of sources now, especially like in social media, that it seems like objective reality has been left behind. Where and we're more concerned with finding the right headline that says kind of what we already think.
Yeah.
And then we put that out rather than kind of doing research and, seeing what sources are and whatever. So The Economist had a tweet November 1st that this site, Oxford, uses for its example. It says, Obama founded ISIS. George Bush was behind 9/11. Welcome to post-truth politics.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could maybe get there if you tried hard enough, but it seems like in today's culture, in the post-truth culture, like you can get there without really any effort. It's just like, oh yeah, I totally believe that.
Well,
like,
yeah.
What?
When you first said the post-truth word, I was thinking that you were going to go down the lines of news articles, like the fake news.
Right.
I thought that's where you were going with more. And if we
like
think about
Babylon B and
if we think about some fake news, well, not even just Babylon, like satirical. I call that satirical news. I mean, like this news has no merit of truth. Like we're gonna make up some headlines or something, or connect dots that have no business being connected. And we're gonna outline this article purely to stir an emotional response out of you. Clickbait or whatever you want to call it, but yeah, I thought that's where you were going to go with it first. Was fake news.
It definitely is a part of that. Some of the other words that made the short list were alt-right.
Tell me about alt-right. I've heard this now a few times. Is this?
I don't know a whole lot about it. It's Gabe, extreme conservative or reactionary viewpoints.
Extreme conservative, alt-right.
Oxford.
Not even just right, but it's alt-right.
Characterized by a rejection of mainstream politics,
alternate right,
and by the use of online media to disseminate deliberate.
Oh boy, content. We don't know people like that.
Yeah, that's a little. Glass Cliff. I don't know that I've heard of this one. References a situation in which a woman or member of a minority group ascends to a leadership position in challenging circumstances.
Instead of the glass ceiling, it's a glass cliff.
Yeah.
You're going to keep approaching to where you go, and then we're just waiting for you to fall off the edge.
Right. Brexiteer is another one.
A Brexiteer.
Somebody who's in favor of Brexit. Yeah. Coulrophobia, something like that, which is extreme or irrational fear of clowns. With the clown incident, apparently.
The scary clowns at night stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, aren't you just asking for someone to just pop you?
Yeah, I would.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but people freak out when other people have fun.
Yeah, but I mean, like in general, like pranks where. Like there's some YouTube clips of people like pranking just the wrong people at the wrong time, and like guns are getting pulled on you, or like you get the crap kicked out of you because you're doing something incredibly dumb for the situation.
Right.
Scaring people in a intentional fear. I understand because they're strategically going, let's go into neighborhoods or dark alleys or dark places and scare the crap out of you, knowing like, hey, guess what? You probably have a deep fear of getting murdered in the middle of the night, while you're walking from your apartment to someplace else.
It does not sound entertaining.
No, someone's going to get popped because of this, man. And I don't mean a punch
Bobby,
in the face.
Are you super enjoying the fact that you can lounge in your chair and no matter what your head does, the mic is picking it up?
I got to say, it's pretty nice. I'm wearing a headset this time instead of using the microphone, so that way Dano, we have all three people in studio here at the church, so it's sitting back's kind of nice.
Yeah,
I will say.
Seemed like
what else was really nice?
What?
Arrival.
Oh man! Wait, are we?
Well, we're not there yet. No,
okay.
I'm foreshadowing to the Arrival.
There's a chit chat on here called "Christmas Present for John."
Yes, sir. I got your Christmas present.
Say what?
I know you're a Discraft guy, but I got you an Innova AVR putter. Now this is a factory second putter, and
Sweet.
you don't even know what it came with or how it was going to come, what color, what if it had any weird, what the problem with it was. This has a stamp of Oregon State Parks logo on it. The last few that I ordered, all of them had the stamp, so it was kind of like the last barrel in the shipment of 170 gram.
171. Yeah. Dang. Thanks, Bob.
You're gonna be an AVR guy, I think. No.
I might. I mean, it is the most popular putter in the world.
Number one putter, man.
I do like a
free date Daniel idea. Go disc golfing, man.
I'm terrible at disc golf.
It don't matter. It don't matter.
I feel bad, Bob.
Everybody's bad in the beginning. You just keep playing. So, Merry Christmas.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome, sir.
Merry Christmas.
I do like
Happy
a beaded
holidays.
putter.
Merry holidays
which
season.
This does not have a bead, but I'm sure I'll get used to it.
You're gonna get used
I just like when it's got the ridge that sits in the knuckle crease thing.
Well,
it's
It
good placement.
should just be more like that.
Yeah, that's
putter,
not comfortable
no,
for me.
That's why. You could be putting just with 2 fingers too.
What?
Yeah, get to that spot.
You're weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gabe
says don't do it because he broke a light the first throw he tried when doing it in his house.
Whoopee!
All right. We don't have a coffee corner.
No coffee corner. We want to leave time
today.
for digging deep.
Yeah, the house is round today, so there are no corners.
I was totally gonna roast ahead of time because I have Costa Rica and Honduras.
Yeah. What are we drinking right now?
This is more the Kenya, I think. Maybe the last of it.
Peaberry.
Close to the last. But I ran out of time because you need at least 12 to 24 hours for the coffee to degas after roasting for the flavor profile to develop.
You just cornered us.
That was a mini corner. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Mini corner.
So keep that in mind, folks, when and if you roast.
Cool. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, let's dive into the fresh roast. All right. Fresh roast time. Daniel Tiernan, I'm going to just sit back, let you tell us about where your mind is going, and we're just going to talk about
just gonna chat it out.
Just chat it out.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna come to the will of the Lord.
In 45 minutes.
Yeah, man.
I'm already in the will of the Lord, Bobby.
Oh, I guess I'm not.
I don't know. Some people haven't been fully sanctified, I guess.
All right, so here's the question. Can we avoid the moral implications of anything? / is there anything that is truly amoral? So and I kind of know what that means, but I also kind of don't. Like, where do you want to take this?
Describe what you described in our office the other day.
Right. So there was actually a good intro into this with the untruth. Was that the word?
Post-truth.
Post-truth.
Yep.
And kind of the way that we get news now, we Google the things and Facebook the things that we like, and then those companies' algorithms pick it up and show us more of the things that we're interested in, and then we can kind of get in this little bubble. And so kind of my question, part of it's from like a creative standpoint. I do writing on a blog. I do it for my job. I've got plans for some books in the future. And it seems like almost every story or all writing contains some sort of moral. And I'm wondering, is it possible to write something without a moral undertone? Because I think that would be really different, and it would differentiate the writing from 99% of everything else. Like every blog post you read has some sort of underlying assumption of what is good and what is bad, or what you should do and should not do. And that's just blogs. I mean, that's not even religion or an establishment or an institution. So there's kind of that end. Like, is it possible to go creatively into a space where moral assumptions don't exist, and maybe I just haven't been exposed to enough, like, amoral or immoral.
I don't know that we're the experts on that either.
Entertainment or artistry.
I will say that I've thought a lot about it.
Right.
Because I also try my hand at the writing. It's hard to say. I think on a consumer end, I think it's possible to kind of consume or appreciate art without first defining its moral implications.
Okay.
So it can be neutral. I think as a creator, though, you're either working in your worldview as it stands now, or you are working against it. So it's either kind of a positive or a negative. If you are trying to destroy some of the morals that like you see in other works or whatever, I mean, you could maybe on the consumeristic end say like, wow, that was like neutral or even like more aggressively amoral or immoral. But I think from the creation aspect, there has to be
a decision.
It has to come into effect.
You're an arbiter of what is good and what is bad.
The closest thing I can think of in my mind right now of something that was neutral was 2001: A Space Odyssey, the whole ending.
Okay.
Because you had no idea what was going on, and at the end you're like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And then I read
just you, Bob.
I read like what was it? I think it was Stanley Kubrick's like reason, like what is his interpretation?
Left it open.
He's like, I'm intentionally leaving it open to interpretation of whatever it is you want to think about it. And I'm like,
so do you think
that's why that sucked?
Right, but do you think the movie is entirely void of morals?
I think the ending was.
Okay.
But that's still that's impressive.
Was close. As close to completely
from a creator standpoint. If you have and if you were trying to make it not one point or the other,
right.
That's impressive. I guess
maybe because the ending. So there's no spoiler alert here. One of the characters he goes into this weird kind of like alien place. He sees himself like progressively age really really quickly to the point of death, but then also sees then like new life, like a child in the womb. So I don't know if maybe it conveyed an emotional response still about futility, but hope for something new. Which is that a moral position, or is that just in general truth? Like things die, things live.
Yeah. In a traditional definition for like literature and art, something with a moral in it is like you ought to do this or you ought not to do that. So do you mean that element in a work of art?
I mean
or
that element,
like
but I also
thematically
mean, I also just,
good or bad?
I think both. And there's a couple other layers to this question. The second kind of sort of question I have is it possible? It seems that if you take on a certain worldview that takes a strong stance on something, whatever side of the coin you take that on, it seems like there's almost always a silencing of another human or the other side or a differing worldview's voice. That it's very hard to stand for something and listen to the other side. And part of me wonders if it's possible, because am I able to, if I take a strong stance on this issue, will I be able to fully listen to, empathize, and understand another individual or another group of people who have the complete opposite moral or idea, or their stance is in complete opposition?
So is your conflict in agreement? Like, is your conflict in deciding, like, can I essentially disagree with someone yet still listen to them? Because it's not whether or not I take a stance, but whether or not the fact that there's a disagreement therefore means I can't listen.
Well, it seems like most people don't. Like, if I'm going to take a firm stance, then I've got a narrative running throughout my stance and my worldview. And there's the one thing you can go, I listen to them, I listen to the other side. But I mean like a deep, like, can you walk with that person? Can you take them seriously?
Well, I'm listening to you right now.
Right.
No.
Can you actually consider it?
Yeah.
If you're taking, usually when people take a hard stance on something, they have a fair low level of uncertainty, or at least they act like they have a fair low level of uncertainty.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And it takes, I think, a certain amount of uncertainty to truly listen and to consider another side. Not just like, I'm going to listen to your points or your argument, and then I'm going to bring back my points and my argument, but I'm going to
really consider.
Let those other points
drop
affect,
my. You know, if I'm going to listen to you for an hour, I'm going to talk to someone face to face in a true relationship. I'm going to like actually leave. I'm going to take my assumptions of the way the world works or religion works or who God is, and like actually drop them for 60 minutes and listen to you, and consider what you're doing. And I think that's really hard.
So you're saying that in general, just as a society, we do not do a good job of actually essentially putting ourselves in the shoes of other individuals when they're trying to explain or give a viewpoint about a certain issue. We don't do a good job in general of doing that, getting into their shoes, understanding what they're trying to say, and then without an agenda of immediately trying to squash whatever their opinion
is. And I think
is.
we encourage not listening to other people.
Oh, in what way? Yeah.
In what way? So
dogmatic.
like you can just go left or right here. You go, if you're a Donald Trump supporter and you how was I going to frame that? Like if you even consider things, I think we praise people who are firm in their beliefs and who act like they know what they're talking about, and who don't.
The positive reinforcement.
They're not
of it.
wandering.
Yeah,
They don't say, "I don't know."
Mm-hmm.
And we ask a lot of opinions of a lot of people on multiple stances and say, "Now, what's your viewpoint on that?"
Yeah.
Right.
And the person goes, I guess I don't really know, and I might not know for the next 5 years, or I might never know. We go, I'm not following that guy. I'm not going to listen to that guy. I'm not going to go anywhere. Or, if you're a Hillary supporter or a Bernie supporter, and someone else said that, well, what about Trump? Maybe he's not what all the headlines say.
Yeah.
I think there'd be an encouragement if you're on the extreme left, where you'd go, that person just considered listening to a racist bigot, and then we question that person who considered listening to the person we consider to be a racist bigot, and then we go, I'm blocking you on Twitter. I'm not talking to you again. You're not cool. Whatever.
Yeah.
And it just seems like what it's doing is blocking and breaking down relationship.
I remember this point, like when we talked a little bit about this in the office, was my next point is that always wrong? To not only be, let's say you are certain, but to block out a perceived extreme wrong.
No, it's not. I wouldn't say it's always wrong, but here's what I find.
The hardest part is we do that too often. We do that more as the default instead of actually being like very selective in the times where we're like, no, you need to shut up. You're so wrong.
So I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. So you've got Standing Rock and the No Dapple, whatever. And I think like just depending on how you're wired or your life experience, when there's an issue that's driven right down the middle, you've got like an instinct of justice that goes this side or that side. And you're just like, I just want to follow that narrative and I don't want to listen to anything else from the other side. I just want to go, these guys are wrong and these guys are right.
Yeah.
So, was it a couple weeks ago, I shared an article about veterans who are going to go support the Native Americans and their stand against the cops and the oil companies and whatever. And I just shared it and put it in comments, just put it on my Facebook feed. And then my buddy Shem, who works at a jail in Fargo, and has seen protesters from there come through his jail and works with people who go out there and work on the lines, was like, hey, dude, you want to talk about this? So in my mind, and when you Google it, and I don't know, Google knows,
Google knows.
Google knows my liberal leanings. That's what I'm saying.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. And like I've honestly tried to look into it and tried to get some like unbiased information. It seems to be like this article's for it, this article's against it. But I would say, okay, so as a normal person or just being myself, I'd like lean towards the Native American side. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, okay, now I got someone who works in a jail, who's got friends who are cops. And the question I had to ask myself is, what do I do if Shem has a story about a coworker that he has that had violence done to him, or is like had a leg blown off, or had or is telling me stories about the families of cops whose lives are in distress right now. Right. What am I going to do when that happens? Because I want it to be the clear narrative that I saw on my friend's social media feed in an edited 4-minute YouTube clip. Yeah, what do I do if he goes, yeah, my buddy, like, he's in the hospital right now because, someone from the protesters threw a rock at him and he's in critical condition.
Yeah.
Well,
I go, oh, that's terrible, and then move on? or do I actually, can I put myself in that cop shoes? Can I put myself there and take what happened to him just as seriously as what I think the negative, things that the protesters are experiencing?
Isn't an element of like, do you feel society is too often doing we have a certain limit of truth in our bucket, and I'm only going to throw all of that to one side or the other side. I cannot say I'm going to split my truth to both sides and be like, well, you're right here and you're right here and you're both wrong here. Like taking Standing Rock,
like a nuanced perspective.
Well, taking Standing Rock, you're like, listen, I think like what's going on with the pipeline or something like that. You take the stance like, this is wrong, but protesting by throwing rocks at cops and doing the thing you don't want done to you, doing it to other people, is also wrong. Like, there are two wrongs going on here. There are too often we blend, I think, issues together.
Well, blend and then simplify. Like I was going to say, I think a lot of times, especially with our instinctual urges, like, or wherever we lean, especially on the political spectrum, we tend to simplify, and I'm guilty of just being lazy with stuff.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the protesters, probably many of them did not protest well. I personally did not care because I saw what I perceived to be an injustice with the pipeline going through,
right?
And I was like, this is wrong, and that's where I stood on it. So, and yeah, there is a lot more nuance. I feel like
that's my gut reaction too. Like, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care if I don't care if they threw a few rocks. But the person who got hit by those rocks cares.
Really cares.
Absolutely.
Especially if they're not going to see out of their eye or something.
And mom cares. Mm-hmm. That person's wife and kids who haven't seen them in 2 weeks cares.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, this isn't a podcast about one side or the other. Standing Rock. It really isn't. And that person who threw that rock and has feelings and anger that are real and most likely justified, that they care. So, and is it possible to not demonize one or the other or both?
Right. I mean,
when you're faced with something like that,
this is weird because I came into this like thinking about post-truth, and isn't this ridiculous? And like, how can we elevate like our emotional response over like what ought to be objectively like obvious? And now I'm kind of thinking like, I think we're legitimately in a pickle because we see these complex issues happening, and everybody has, like you said, like if there are people that that are affected by something, that tends to shape your worldview and your political view and whatever, regardless of whether or not the universal or the big picture issue is right or wrong. So, and the people who were standing with the No Dakota Access Pipeline, it is not their place to say like, well, we don't care about cops and we don't care what happens to them. Like that was not good, like at all. So,
and I don't think it's a majority of those people. I think most of them are peaceful.
No. So I feel like I should define this word because maybe we're dancing around it, or maybe you want. I feel like it should be defined so we can say this is what we're talking about, or this is not what we're talking about. Pluralism. is a condition or system in which two or more states, groups, principles, sources of authority, etc., coexist. So is this what we're talking about here? Are we? Is this just the struggle of a nation trying to be more pluralistic, just because there are so many diverse causes and issues and stuff out there, or is this like a foundational, like, can we listen to people and just?
I struggle with that word because there's always two sides to an issue.
No, there's always 17.
Well, I'm saying, when I say there's always two sides, is what I'm saying is there's not just one.
Okay.
When I say there's always two, I'm saying there's not just one.
But
traditionally, the goal of any decision that whatever has affected so many people is we're going to find the one dominating stance and then say this is the correct stance. And people who oppose that stance, regardless of your feelings or your emotions or whatever, how it's affecting you, whether it's affecting you logically or emotionally or spiritually or whatever, is wrong. And I think that's, with social media, with the advent of and increases in technology, the people who are being marginalized is now being more seen and recognized than ever before by the general populace.
Right, because of technology.
Because of technology. And because people care to share it. Like, I think people legitimately be like, wait a second, I didn't know about this. Do you guys know? And people are sharing. And people are giving that information out. And so more of the emotion of, I'm being affected by this, and I feel an injustice.
Or I know
that doesn't always mean you're right, but it does mean, how do we consider this? We're living in a society where people have to make decisions that are now way more complex than they were before. Because now, before they were just given facts. You need oil, here's the space it's got to go through. Do you approve the money to build a pipeline or not? Yeah, but now it's like, wait a second. There's a whole bunch of people that are getting affected. Yeah. There's X, Y, all these other elements and variables to the decision-making process that if you're going to be, I guess it's a matter of how effective do you want to be? How compassionate are you? Because I could be completely discompassionate, just say, screw you. I don't care about your emotions. I don't care about your stuff. And I'm going to just say, no, I'm building this. So, I'm doing that.
Backing up to what you had said before, Dan, like, in order to take a stance in some of these things, does that automatically require silencing of another voice?
You're asking me that?
That's a good question. I mean, that's what we're dancing around.
I think before there was kind of the theoretical true,
because in the end we have
to
build the pipeline or not build the pipeline. So how do we take it?
Right, because this is kind of the down and dirty. Before it was like the hypothetical, like, well, I'm right and you're wrong, but I'll listen to you anyway. But now it's like, well, we both have a little bit of right and we both maybe have a little bit of wrong. Like, how do I proceed in what I believe to be true?
Right.
And still have respect and compassion and allow other voices to be heard. Dang, that's hefty.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Do you think well, Bobby was talking about what we have to do and make choices and historically what we've done. Do you think, like, maybe we or I'm asking the wrong question? If I go into, okay, here's an issue, there's two groups, they're divided, I want to be compassionate about both sides. Am I just starting at, like, the wrong point by asking who's right? Because what my ultimate goal in this is love in relationship. And if I'm asking who's wrong or who's right or who has more justice or more injustice or have I put all these barriers in the way of love or relationship? Like, questions
I don't say necessarily.
Questions I don't need to ask in order to love.
Because I think it's your motivation.
Straight to the loving without asking who's right or wrong.
Possibly, but also take in consideration the motivation behind the question. People ask the question, well, who's right and who's wrong? And they have a different motivation
because they want to be right.
Love. Yeah, they want rights. When you say, where has injustice occurred? Who's had more injustice and less injustice? That's coming from a standpoint of love. And how do we correct injustice while still seeking truth while still seeking other things.
But will it help me love?
Yeah.
Does
absolutely
knowing who's wrong and who's right empower me to love?
Well, that's a different question.
Help and empower?
Yes, because if you understand more of a situation by asking who's right and who's wrong, being able to discern your appropriate amount of energies to a place and where do I put in love or not.
Help out the side that has experienced more injustice than the side
if that's your objective to start, it doesn't mean you have only a limited number of love and you only can do it one side or the other. You're getting back to the picking one or the other. You still logistically have to do something or not do something, or do one thing first and then another thing second. Right. So you still have to ask like preliminary questions to know, what do I do next? I want to love both sides. Whoa, this is really bad. I think we need to prioritize this, deal with it first, and then we get moving, No,
I mean, that makes sense.
And okay, so is it?
It's a matter of your motive. In my mind, it's motivation.
Yeah,
I think you're asking the right questions because you're coming from a standpoint of love.
I think too. I think it needs examination. Maybe not in this podcast, but just in our lives. Is the best way, or is an effective way of loving people, agreeing with them and taking their side? I think sometimes it is. Yeah. To have an advocate for their cause is really effective. I think there are also times, though, where there are other ways of loving effectively that don't compromise our own positions, if that makes sense.
And sometimes telling people you're flat out wrong.
That
to
too.
Get them on a right track.
I think sometimes it has to be the case. But I think, I don't know, just thinking of the pipeline issue, how do we love the people that we don't agree with? I don't think the requirement is just changing our minds and being yeah, they're right, and just giving up our convictions or whatever.
Someone who tells me God doesn't exist, it doesn't mean I'm going to be I'm
going to love that person and become an atheist. What?
Right. My question is does advocacy lead to tribalism? So
those are terms that probably need to be defined.
Okay, so if me being an advocate and going, I'm standing with this person in an issue, they're standing against maybe people or ideas that are contrary to that.
Yep. Does being an advocate label you as the other side? Yeah.
Does that? I think that the thing that I fear is being a social being and. Like us all, you find someone and you go, there's injustice, there's a cause, I'm with them.
Yeah.
And some of this just happens internally, you're just on my iPhone.
Oh, you go, the feeling.
Right. You're just yeah, those are my people.
Yeah,
and then share, subscribe, 5 stars.
Like that news feed.
And I think the thing I feel spoken or unspoken is that group. Groupthink, I don't think is good. Sure. Having just this, we're just going to go with what the group says and what the group thinks. There was a moral statement there. I don't think it's good. Maybe groupthink is awesome. But am I going to, if I fully side with them and I'm fully an advocate for that group, I will feel pressure from them, spoken or unspoken, to not listen to the other side, to not consider points that the other side makes, to maybe not love the other side, or to pursue relationship.
Yeah.
As soon as you advocate for one group, the social norm is to not pursue deep,
correct,
empathetic, meaningful relationship with people of the other group.
Correct. That is the social norm. Is that a problem? Yeah.
It's hard.
Yes. Yeah. I think Christians are called against those kind of things.
Well,
I think of our example with Jesus. The social norm for a teacher at the time was a lot different than what he was doing, but he was still talking to both sides, still trying to love both sides, and it looked differently.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's inordinately complicated with social media, and I keep bringing it up like kind of a scapegoat, which I don't think I mean to.
Scapegoat technology, not people groups.
Yeah. I am a fan of technology for sure, but I think it has become, to use your parlance, Dan, it's tribalism is really easy to, like, there's just 100 million tribes now to join because like the world has shrunk, and like, all of a sudden there are political controversial issues in countries that we really have no tangible influence, but we can talk about it like we are part of that tribe. So I think
Aleppo, I mean, Aleppo, 10 years ago, would you have ever known about Aleppo?
And I mean,
it's a lot of pressure on the human psyche.
It is a lot of pressure. So on the one hand, it is a positive because I think there are people in the States that are doing positive things and helping out where otherwise they wouldn't. But on the other hand, because I associate with that tribe, pro-Syrian refugees or whatever, that actually put me in harm's way with the people that I interact with in person on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So how do I love them when really this virtual almost disagreement is actually standing in the way?
It feels like being called to a level of maturity that you're not sure you're capable of.
It's intense. Yeah.
All right, so I just thought of this. Would you say, I would say this is leading towards when there is an increase in the opportunity to love, there's also an increase in division. So
you got to explain that.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is we now have access to knowledge of people groups and situations and things that are going on all over the place where we have an opportunity to love them, to advocate for them, to feel their injustice, to bear their burdens, to educate other people, to share all those kind of. We have further opportunities than we've ever had before. Yeah. Are we not seeing more division though? Because when we all go into our social groups here at church or whatever, and we sit down when we talk about Aleppo or we talk about this, we're instantly putting labels on everybody that we're meeting, and even good friends that we've had. We're like, well, you believe in that? You side in this?
Could you call it love though?
What I'm saying is, when
like
also Jesus came onto the earth, and the most love possible coming out of a human being arrived, there was now also the most division that probably occurred in
Jesus' time?
Against Jesus.
Against Jesus.
Oh, there was no war when Jesus was around, which is a rare historical.
But also there still wasn't non-division of, I mean, at the tension of Jews versus Romans, the tensions of Sadducees versus and Pharisees versus the lay people, the amount of division that he created, like he brings love and people went, we're going to kill you.
On a small level, but I mean, he came to like an occupied nation, basically. It's not exactly like war.
I'm not
maybe
saying,
I'm thinking on too big of a level.
Yeah, I think you took my analogy to like in a specific, and I'm like more of the sense of like we have an opportunity to love well at a bigger scale than we ever have. And when we communicate things and we're saying, I'm siding with this, I want to be an advocate for this, instantly you're pressured to not have to be on a divisive side. Like we're going to put pressure on you to be divided over here now because you're an advocate and trying to love as many people can. It's like, no way. But more has there been pressure to divide you, actually.
Okay, right.
When you do that.
That makes sense. But do you think the human capacity to love has actually grown?
I'm saying the availability, not capacity.
The options on which to give your energy? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That makes sense.
Yep. Because, I mean, 20 years ago, did you know about Aleppo?
No.
And just what was going around on the earth? I mean, unless you were also rich. I mean, in certain parts of not so recent history, not so recent past, you had to be rich in order to get information. Right. Or it took a really long time for you to get that information.
Yeah.
But now, many more people have information readily available.
Right, we all have supercomputers in our pockets.
Yep.
Right. So do you think with all of this that there is kind of a finite amount of positive movement as far as advocacy or truth or anything like that? And kind of when we, as individuals, as we decide to pursue a cause, that necessarily leaves behind something else.
Are we finding more gray versus finding more black and white?
Yeah, maybe that now like advocacy or compassion now includes needing to single things out or like have certain ones make the cut. I don't know. Maybe it's irrelevant. Maybe we should just pick stuff and do it. Like instead of, I don't know.
Right. Like, so part of me goes, just stop seeking justice. And
oh man,
like, because like, just love who's in your path and quit. Like what's the point of going on Google and trying to verify all the links that are in the blog post to figure out which.
What is it you're afraid of? That other people label you and put you into groups and put you in camps.
Right,
are you afraid of that, or that's inhibiting you to move into what you still feel like? I feel it's right to love both sides, so I'm going to love both sides. Well, I have pressures, so I'm afraid, and I'm not going to do it though.
Right, I'm afraid to think that it's okay for someone, whether it be an oppressor or the oppressed or the terrible people or the bad people, whoever those people are, that I'm going to become a part of a group that thinks it's okay if those people are dead. If violence is committed against the other, once the us and the them has been created, and it goes so far to say that.
Do you think that's an automatic though?
So you're afraid to be on the wrong side of justice.
Or even just to objectify or demonize people.
I'm saying the demonization of human beings, which and the way that technology has accelerated our ability to say, F you should be dead.
Right.
Because most, I think groups that I've been a part of say it's okay for some people to die.
Yeah.
I guess being a Christian for a lot of my life, it's okay. It was right. It was just that those human beings are dead.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid, those are the arguments I've been given for violence in the Old Testament, and not that we have to get into all those things, but realizing that is very possible if you firmly align with a certain religion, institution, political group, rock band, whatever it is, that at some point you give up your own humanity enough to say that someone who's actually your brother or sister, it's okay if they die. In fact, they should, and it's just. That's what I'm scared of.
Right.
So are you saying you're scared of being a part of, like, just being labeled a part of that other group? That's saying this one's being...
No,
I
think basically once you align yourself with a cause...
Are you afraid that you will actually start thinking that?
Both. That I would be a part of that group, which I guess just on a personal safety note, people that think it's okay to kill other people, that's a little scary. And also from afar of like what that looks like.
Right.
Or also just the fact that it's not, I don't think it's love. And then...
So could we say then, because I know kind of where you're going, like, the Christian versus the sinner and like hell and salvation. For what we can control, would you say that you're trying to make the attempt to put people or anyone who's in your path or relationship above social justice or causes? Like as far as ideas, like whoever you meet, regardless of whether you agree with them or disagree with them, you're going to put them as a person first.
I would like to.
Yeah. Okay. Like I think I can get behind that. The implications of all of the other stuff, I think, make it really complicated for me to try to work through in like the minute that I just heard it.
Well, I guess I'm confused, and it just seems like still that you have a fear of what people perceive you to be based on how you love them or how you love others. It's more of a fear of just how people perceive you and label you.
No, it's not. No. It's not just that though, because
so change it. What change it to what it is?
Maybe I miscommunicated it.
I think I'm tracking with you.
I just feel like I've already, from the way I was raised, everyone is, from living in a nation, living in a church,
Yeah.
I have, for a lot of my life as a youth, disregarded on any serious level certain people groups
Yeah,
or whatever.
I understand. You want to be compassionate to other people groups. Like,
Right.
to all people groups,
right.
to all people,
Right.
understanding the humanity of them and not just saying that it's okay for people to... I get that point.
Right.
I'm asking, what is it you're really afraid of? That you're going to start thinking that about people? Or that people will think you think that?
I thought I said both earlier.
Yes. So, okay, I'm getting to I think you're more afraid of how people are going to perceive you because you say you align with a certain people group by finding injustice in them.
So you're saying
So you have two groups, Group A and Group B.
So you're saying
Group A says you found injustice in Group A and you say, I'm going to help with this injustice, I want to advocate for them. At the same time, Group A says Group B should die.
yeah.
You're afraid of how people in Group C view you because you're
For
in Group
aligning
A.
with Group A.
Is that what you're saying?
And the people
And Group B, and Group B, and Group D, whatever,
as they fall their death and stare me in the eye.
So, but I mean,
Well, and just
I
the
feel like you're
capacity
paralyzing yourself to just do nothing. But when at the core, your heart is compassion for people and love.
I don't know.
How
I don't know.
can you fault at what
I
you
just got a
feel
quick question.
is loving for people?
Why do you think it's? I feel like you're questioning my heart because you're saying.
No, I'm questioning your fear status.
No, because you're saying that I care more about what people think than what group I'm actually a part of, or what I actually do as far as love.
I'm exactly.
Why do you think I care more about what people think than the actuality of being a part
Because
of a
you
group?
said I don't want to. Then if this is going to happen, I don't want to be a part of any group. You said that.
Right. So
It fears you so much that you're like, I'm thinking about like not actually just doing anything.
well,
That
And
to me,
did-
that
did-
fear
did
has controlled
anybody-
your decision making.
Did anybody die
Yeah.
in a conflict because they're both like, I'm
just
just
not gonna
not
do it.
going to do anything, and they both went home? What bad thing resulted because of that? When two sides are like,
well,
this is
No. You
But
you
we're
have a
talking about-
motivation to act in loving for someone.
Mm-hmm.
But your fear of what the other side will perceive if there is an injustice between the multiple groups, you're saying is leading to the point of, I don't know if I should do that.
and inactivity doesn't happen in a vacuum. So you got to remember, like, if there is an injustice that we feel called to rectify, it is because there are people that have been harmed. So inactivity in that sense, I think, is its own form of wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm saying that
it's
if
not two
that
different groups,
inactivity is
just
because
saying-
you're afraid of how people are going to perceive you, that's my question is, then you are increasing the importance level of how people perceive you versus to rectify.
I don't see it about perception.
I'm just not getting
How
where.
is it not? You're afraid of how people will see you.
because-
No,
That is a
I actually
perception.
no. I actually care about being or not being a part of a group that says it's okay for those people to die. I don't want to be a part of that group just for both how I'm perceived, and just for actually being a part. I just don't want to associate with the tribalistic group that says it's okay for this person or that person to
Got
die.
you. Okay.
I don't
You're
want.
saying you don't want to be. Okay.
I don't wanna
You
say
don't want to
I'm
be a
in-
part of all the baggage. You see one part of Group A, but there's more baggage to Group A, and you don't want to be a part of the whole
Yeah,
boatload of
I don't want to
baggage.
be someone.
Okay.
I don't want to
Okay.
be.
I'm
You
sorry.
know when
I'm sorry. I'm
Saul is holding the coats and they're
Yeah,
stoning
yeah.
him. I don't want to be Saul saying, "Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah,
okay. I'll hold your coats while you go kill that guy. Sure, whatever.
doing a wrong
You
in
know,
order to
or
do
like,
it right.
or I don't really agree with you killing them, but yeah, I'll still be a part of your group.
Yeah,
I'll still
okay.
go to all
Now,
the meetings.
okay, now I understand
Okay.
what you're saying. I thought it was strictly like, I want to help with an injustice, but the other side's going to see me wrong. Not that I want to help with the justice, and I also see where you're wrong in a whole bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
and I don't want to...
Right.
I think on the
I get
flip
you.
side, though, from where Bobby was coming from, I think it's a fine line to walk, but I mean, Jesus was frequently associated with people who were bad, like just bad, period. And that
Right.
somehow was okay with him, and he knew kind of the line to walk, like where he could show compassion to people when association with them was like really looked down on, and maybe even legitimately looked down on. Like if you're hanging out with people who like rob other people of their entire income and leave them like on the streets. Like that to me would be like, dude, like I can't like have fun with that guy because he's a terrible person.
Is there also not a group of people who are going
who don't have any problems?
Who don't have any problems that you can't?
Yeah.
I see that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm with you now.
But you gotta. So at the same side, are you willing, like John's saying, to associate?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not join their gang, but to be buddies with, to hang out with someone who's engaging in violence.
So.
Okay.
Because I also find myself demonized. Like, I'm finding more and more. Like, I think I'm a pacifist.
Yay!
So
you're outnumbered, Bob.
Not a pacifist.
You wussies!
Right. Not a pacifist.
A pacifist.
Yeah.
But so then it's easy for me to say, oh, they believe in killing people. They're terrible. I don't want to be with them. Like, and do the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the question.
My question is, how do I be a pacifist, but also like be a part of society? Or like, keep listening.
Are you answering your own question?
To people who are like, yes, we need to go to war and get rid of those bad guys so the world will be better. How do I go, that's so a bunch of baloney. We'll solve no problems.
Yeah.
Right.
And come over for lunch.
Well,
I want to hang out with you.
I don't consider myself a pacifist, but I also would say I don't think war is necessarily the answer either.
I don't believe in any redemptive violence. Violence, there's no redeeming factors of violence in my book. Maybe that makes me an extremist. It's never redemptive.
So then ideas of revelation of that actually being an end judgment of that violence that will, the traditional standpoint of end times.
Tiny small can of worms.
Yeah.
I think there is a difference between humans perpetrating violence in their own misguided sense of judgment and divine right to create and destroy. But that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. Another can of worms for another.
For the pacifist, I think that makes humans more moral than God.
Well, that's something I've chewed on too. Like, our spheres of morality, are we bound by the same parameters of morality as God is? Are those necessarily the same things? Do we have scriptural proof of that? I don't really know. But I guess for me, it doesn't go without saying, like, it's not an obvious conclusion that we do have the same morality or that we're bound by the same restrictions. I don't know. Yes, we're made in the image. But we definitely have our own set
of... We are a
of
subset. We are not gods.
Do's and don'ts.
I guess I would just like to just 5 minutes pick your brain on that.
Yep.
Because it's so confusing. I literally don't understand.
Okay.
So I need to have some empathy here.
I don't really understand either.
I don't understand how, as a Christian person says, I'm trying to be more like Jesus. I'm trying to be as much like Jesus as I can be outside of like being omnipresent and all like the God stuff.
Yeah.
And pursue that their whole life and consider sanctification and growth and fruit to be more like Jesus, and then turn around and say Jesus, who is God, lives by a different moral and standards of justice than I do. So the person and the God that you are trying to exemplify your life in, and who told you all these things that you consider to be human justice, lives by a separate standard.
So here's my
goes
thinking
over
on
my
that.
head,
and I don't have it completely thought out because I'm
my
relatively comfortable living in a gray area,
Right.
which I know like you have a tougher time with than I do.
right?
But I think so like you said, there necessarily are distinctions between God and humans, and that. Even in the benign stuff or the benevolent stuff, the omnipresence, the omniscience, the omnipotence, we are created beings. And I think that in itself is enough of an implication to say that we are fundamentally different. And although there is a golden standard by which to live, I don't know, and maybe this is just semantics, but I don't think we are commanded to be God-like. We're simply called to be holy. And holiness has been defined throughout Scripture, and it does say that God is holy, but I think for us to, like, it doesn't say do all the things that God does, and then you'll be holy. Like, it lays out a very specific path for humans to approach holiness. So I think there is leeway in that, and it doesn't have to be like, well, God can do this, and for humans to do it, it would be sin. But I think there are metaphors that maybe explain that, in that a 4-year-old, it would be a sin to, like, try to drive a car or whatever. And I mean, there are, it's a greater gap, I think, than just like an age. Like, eventually we'll get there.
So there's some,
but I really believe that we are fundamentally, like, our nature is set up as distinct from God. We are made in the image, but I mean, we're dust. So I think there's enough there to imply that we have a different MO or something. I don't know. Like I said, I'm still working on it. I don't know.
The thing is that humans are constantly trying to talk about how the divine is so much different than them, and trying to ascend to some sort of inhuman height. And God is always in the opposite direction. Like, the incarnation of God becoming a man is, to me, it just seems like it seems like this huge revelation and a mystery revealed that God is so much. He's so human. He's so flesh and bones. He's not Gnostic. He's not just a spirit floating in the sky. He's like us.
Yeah. From my point of view, I guess I would say it's both.
I mean, it's kind of,
they're not mutually exclusive things.
Right.
And that is, to me, part of the mystery of the whole deal, is that God could become human, and yet we can't be God. You know, like,
right. I just think that should be, like, squatted on for like 40 years before.
Oh,
like,
no
it
question.
should be skipped for, like, and then God became human. But he's still, like, completely different than us. And
well,
go back, because that was.
Yeah, we're all just in different spots. Like, right. And I do go there. Yeah, it's just.
So can I just back you up to the point that, so maybe I can understand this here. So, God, we're not God, and so there's some things that God will probably do that would be wrong for us to do because of the gap between us and God.
Mm-hmm.
What could it be? Assignment? Like, God has created us. We're His things. We're His people.
Yeah.
Could it be an element of role?
I think that helps the argument out.
Well, like, God has a different role than we do, in a different assignment than we do.
I think that makes more sense. It seems different. John said that there would be some things that God would do that if we did them would be sins.
Well,
so if we follow
role,
God's example to the fullest extent, we'll sin.
Let's be real. I mean, I cannot rightfully command the entire human race to worship me. Not only am I not worthy, but even if I thought I was, that would be sin. God can do it because He's worth it, and He made everybody. That, to me, is a vast distinction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe I think of God in too human terms because, like, man, that sounds so douchey.
That's not a bad thing.
Worship me or you're wrong. Worship me or you're sinning. Like,
well,
yeah, why not?
Yeah, I guess
He gets to say that, and we don't.
Yeah,
like,
He makes the rules, right?
Yeah,
I am not the rule maker,
right?
So
nobody would want to hang out with that guy at a party. Nobody. Go to the middle of the floor and say, "Everyone bow down, otherwise you're sinning."
That could be different than what he's saying is what worship me is. I mean, we have this. You already have a preconception of what in the presence of God will be like, what it means to worship Him, and that means just sit down and look at my feet, versus let's be together.
Maybe I phrased that incorrectly.
Okay.
You know
For me
I mean?
to command that would be wrong. Period.
Right. I don't think anyone will
the jury is still out, maybe. Well, I think we're commanded to worship, but I also think the nature of God draws worship from us.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's as much of a command thing. But I think in that regard, we're very different too.
Is it
between
okay?
humanity and God. Like that he elicits worship and reverence and awe. Like those things just come naturally.
Doesn't a baby do the same thing?
No.
Okay. I mean, I feel like humans are adored by one another.
Yeah.
Adoration is different.
It's different than worship. Maybe I got my vocab mixed up.
I would say it's different.
Adoration is a component of worship.
Yeah, but yeah. It doesn't mean it's-
love and respect someone deeply is adore, or worship and venerate. I think there are
I
multiple
think
definitions
it's probably
of adore.
our perception of worship is just so skewed.
We're getting the words here.
Okay, all right. Well,
I mean, I like it. But
yeah, let's wrap
we're running a little
up.
long
We're wrapping up a little bit long.
I made
Let's-
so many moral statements for this.
How dare you, Dan?
Yeah, I love it,
How
man.
dare you?
All right, wrapping up the fresh roast. Quickly, we're gonna review. It's just wrapped up. There you go. Enjoy it. Quickly, let's review. John and I went to go see Arrival last night.
Yeah,
And
man.
without giving so much spoiler alerts, even though Gabe's leaving the
Our
room because he
producer
wants
left.
to see it. Yeah. Freaking A, awesome movie.
Indeed.
And I just said the thing I'm trying not to say as much. Apologize,
Freaking A?
listener. Yeah. But Holy Bananas.
Yes.
That was a great movie.
Bananas in the woods.
Was it not?
Yeah.
I mean, you're thinking one thing through the movie,
Yep.
and then at the end, it's not that thing, and it just reflips you.
It's not that thing that you
It's
thought
not
it
that
was.
thing. Yeah.
All right, so here's my take. I went into it not knowing a whole lot about it. I
Correct.
knew it was an
Same
alien
as me.
movie with
Same as
Amy
me.
Adams.
Yeah.
And I'm not that jazzed about Amy Adams, but boy, I am now. She nailed that role.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I went in there.
That'll be a good out of context quote. Not that jazzed about Amy Adams, but boy,
Okay, soundtrack, super weird and unnerving and bananas. Cinematography, close and often out of focus, which lends itself to like intimate,
Yeah,
which
you wanna
threw
look
me
harder.
off
Yeah,
in a
you
good
wanna
way.
look
Because I thought it was going to be like this, like objective and kind of cold, like scientific alien movie, and it's not. The premise itself is really simple. It's laid out in kind of a complex way, so when you get everything, you're like, oh, there's a cool reveal. But I would say the movie does not hang on the reveal.
Correct.
It's definitely like a feeling, and there's lots of character-driven relationship stuff
it's
that's
really
super
good.
cool. And it's got aliens, which I like, and it's got linguistics, which I really like.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a movie like this, guys. Like it's not your typical alien movie.
And I was deaf, and I went and got the wireless headsets because I couldn't hear them talking.
Bobby became old.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, though. I'm going to put you in my boat because we both turned to each other at one point and we said, what did they say? We both didn't know. So I ran and went gotten the wireless headsets. There was, I think, even more to the soundtrack in the background noise of what was going on because I could turn up the volume quite a bit. And I was hearing communications and different things going on. You could hear my headphones?
Yeah, there was like this little whispery echo that was just a little off from the rest of the movie.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Be Bob's
so I could
headphones.
hear like different background stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is just like, it was getting me really intense. You saw me a few times like sitting forward in my chair because I'm just like, freaking hey, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
So I'm so going with the wireless headsets like
All right.
in Morris Theater from now on. But yeah. Go see Arrival if you are
in
up for
theaters,
alien
if
movies.
possible. It was
go to a
definitely filmed for a theatrical release.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
very,
in Morris
very
now?
cool movie. It's
Yeah,
in Morris.
Morris right now till
Maybe,
Thursday. Till tomorrow.
because Thursday is the midnight showing for Rogue One.
All
Which,
right.
I gotta say, I'm a massive Star Wars fan.
You're not excited
And
about
right now, I would watch Arrival again rather than watch Rogue One.
Whoa.
For real.
Yeah. Arrival was
It's
really
super cool.
All right.
So hopefully we don't talk it up so much that you go and hate it,
good. Yeah.
but it's pretty awesome.
But if you don't like good movies, I guess you won't. So.
You shouldn't listen to this
Yeah,
podcast. You're not the target demographic.
Right.
All
There
right,
you go.
Dano, thanks for
Yeah, man.
screwing with our minds. I loved it. Thank you for finally being patient with me to finally get what the heck you were talking about. I'm slow and old, so
And hard of hearing.
yep, and hard of hearing. So this has been the Roasted
Or
Christian
Bob.
Podcast. I'm Bobby.
I'm John.
Thanks for listening.
You're welcome.
This episode is produced by Pet Fox Studios. Pet Fox Studios is a recording studio in Morris, Minnesota. Visit petfoxstudios.com for more